Hello and welcome to the Hometown Church Podcast. My name is Jesse Roskamp. Thank you. Welcome back, or welcome for the first time if this is your first ever episode listening. We're like 35 episodes in at this point. I don't know. I lost track.
We're almost middle-aged in terms of
we're getting
episodes.
Up there. But I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Deacon Ailes. You just heard his voice there. How you doing today, Deacon?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really well. That was a very enthusiastic hello, so I was trying to keep my composure. I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
That hello, which was good. So thanks. Hello. How are you doing?
Just energized. Yeah, I'm doing great.
Yeah.
I had a nice weekend away, and now back and refreshed and ready to kick it into high gear for the holiday season. You know, a lot of stuff coming up. All good, though.
So you went to Nashville.
I did.
Would you recommend that people go to Nashville?
Yeah, Nashville's cool. If you like music, go listen to some live music.
Yeah.
They've got it all over the place. It's a wonderful town.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, so today we are continuing and actually wrapping up our deep dive into the world of apologetics. This is going to be our last conversation around this topic as we have taken a look at a variety of topics covering the defense and reasoning and evidence for the Christian faith. We've talked about why apologetics is important, the existence of God, the reliability of Scripture, and the evidence for the historical Jesus. And so this week, as we wrap up, we're going to be finishing our series with a conversation around the uniqueness of Christianity. What distinguishes Christianity from other religions and worldviews? And can we truly say that there is one true religion, or is it just a matter of personal preference? So that's going to be the topic of conversation. I'm looking forward to it. How about you?
Yeah, me too. I'm really looking forward to it. This is a big topic for many, and I think for me personally, I've got neighbors who are Muslim, and so this is kind of near and dear to my heart. Just thinking through this, and hopefully being able to bring the joy and the hope that comes through Jesus, as there's kind of that compare contrast sort of thing that's going on. I love this topic.
Yeah.
And I'm really sad that we're ending our apologetics time. There's a lot more that could be said, of course.
Oh, yeah.
But I feel kind of proud of what we've done as just two regular dudes, as we keep talking about. So, yeah, I hope that that's been helpful so far.
Yeah, I think it's been some really fun conversations. It's been a joy for me to just be able to like dive back into all of this stuff that I haven't really looked at in a while, but being able to kind of do refresher stuff and learn new things and hear different perspectives and hear from people in the comments section that are leaving different perspectives than I would have had, and kind of checking some of my own thoughts and how I've been thinking about things. So if you guys have enjoyed this series, let us know. Leave a comment. What was your favorite part about it? What were things that maybe you wish we would have covered and maybe we can come back to in future series or something like that? We'd love to hear all that. But now we're going to get into this conversation surrounding the uniqueness of Christianity. And I think this is kind of a growing sentiment in the culture today that worldviews and religions and all this kind of stuff is just a matter of personal preference. And I think it stems from the idea of truth. And I think that's where we have to kind of start this conversation of surrounding truth and the growing idea that truth is just something that is subjective, that this your truth idea. You got to speak your truth. My truth is different from your truth. So where I would like to start this conversation is just by covering the topic of whether or not truth is objective or whether it's subjective.
Yeah, and that's a great starting point, I think. If we were to just look at truth as a term, as it describes a thing, I'd like to say truth is objective. It corresponds to reality and is not really dependent on personal feelings or opinions or perspectives or different cultures and things of that nature. And I'm going to color that in a little bit more. For instance, the statement, water boils at 100 degrees Celsius at sea level. That's true regardless of how you feel, regardless of your personal beliefs. That's going to happen in those conditions, right? So that's like an objective truth. Objective truth can be tested, validated, and universally applied. Like the laws of nature that we've talked about. Those kinds of things are true. If I throw an apple up into the air, it is a true statement that gravity will cause that apple to come back down. Now, philosophically, truth can be divided into two categories. There's objective truth, which is, again, independent of personal feelings, opinions, or preferences. The earth revolves around the sun. As we learned more about the solar system, we have learned that, hey, this happens. We can observe. This is an observable fact. This is a true thing that happens. The earth, we are a heliocentric solar system. That's a true thing. 2 plus 2 does equal 4. If you take two things and you put them together, you have 4 things. But there is such a thing as subjective truth. What I'd prefer that we call that is like, our perspectives and those kinds of things. I think inherently that mac and cheese is good. That's my opinion. I think that's the opinion of many. So you could almost bring it to objective truth. Not really. But to a person who is lactose intolerant, even though they may enjoy the taste of mac and cheese, they might say mac and cheese is bad because of what it does to my body, and that would be a reasonable perspective, air quotes, truth for them, saying, hey, it's bad for me. And that's where I think this concept of relative truth comes in. What we're talking about there is perspective, is preference, it's these kinds of things, experience-based, those kinds of things, an individual or a cultural preference. Those are things, vanilla ice cream is better than chocolate ice cream would be a relative truth. It would be a subjective truth. And so again, pointing to these universally accepted examples, scientific, historical, mathematical truth, it demonstrates that there is such a thing as objective truth that is true universally and is not based on opinion. So again, like mathematical truths, things that are universally acknowledged, historical facts, Julius Caesar. We accept that Julius Caesar was a real person based on evidence. And whether you believe it or not, you're like, well, there's evidence, So I hope that helps. There's two different kinds, but I think that I would like for us to not use the word truth
right
for subjectivity, and instead use experience or preference or perspective, and those things are valid. I don't mean to do any kind of invalidation for those things, but I want to make sure that we're not giving that the same weight as just the word truth.
Right. Yeah, I think our language here really matters when we're talking about the different types of truth, right? One we could call fact, mm-hmm. and the other we could call experience, mm-hmm. right? Which in both scenarios there is truth within those things, right? You have true experiences, and those things are valid and true. Mm-hmm. But that's different from universal truths of facts of here is something that is, right?
Yeah, DNA carries the encoding for our,
Right, we say Lamar Jackson won the NFL MVP last season, right? That is a true fact. That is what happened. But the experience can be different for different people, right? For the experience for Lamar Jackson is, hey, sweet, I just won MVP. The experience for Josh Allen is, hey, dang, I wish I won MVP, right? Yeah. The experience for the fans is, I wish my guy won MVP. The experience for the person who is giving out the award is, I just gave out another award this year. I just gave out, 50 the last 50 years.
Yeah.
And so it's just another thing.
Yeah.
And so experiences can differ from person to person. And I think that's kind of where our culture has gone, is that we've blurred the line between experiential truth and objective truth, right? Or factual truth. I remember watching a Mike Winger video recently. It came out a while ago, but I just watched it recently. I don't remember why. It just kind of pulled up in my feed, and it was on parenting, so I don't know why I clicked on it. But
get prepared, man.
Yeah, but it was interesting. He had this guest on, Natasha Crane, who wrote some parenting book. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my back, but there was something she was talking about, was how our culture has blurred the line between objective truth and experiential truth. And so one of the things she does when she's developing like a learning plan for kids is separating those two and really spending time teaching kids the difference between objective and subjective truth, and like having kids stop and identify whether something that they said is an opinion or a fact, and being able to identify that from a very early age, because if we don't do that from an early age, that line gets blurred more and more and more, and as you get older, then it becomes very hard to separate the two. And I think that's kind of a lot of what has happened in our culture today.
Yeah, then we're ill-equipped, and I think some of this is natural as language changes over time, as it has always changed over time, that people will kind of just, we'll classify this as that. This is what this word means now. And that is unfortunate. Like, there are great words out there that we've kind of lost the meaning for. Awesome, the word awesome. Man, I wish we didn't use that to describe pizza, even though it's delicious, objectively. We use the word awesome to rightly describe God. Wow, that brings a sense of awe. That leads me in kind of this staggering, stopping motion that leads me to adore, leads me to worship. That's what awesome means. Whereas we're like, man, that pepperoni pizza is awesome. This was an awesome piece of pizza, and it probably wasn't. It was really good, I bet. It was delicious.
Yeah.
It probably wasn't awesome.
Do you think as a society, our vocabulary has shrunk as we've kind of gotten more into like the digital age, where we just have less words that people describe things with?
I don't know if I could say it. Maybe that's true, but I also think that there are as we stop using some words, we start using other words like skibbity and these kinds of things that I'm like, I don't think you even know what that
is.
means.
That even a word?
It is,
yeah.
I guess.
I feel like
it
even
is
that we reduce the words that we use, just like in like different phrases. I mean, there's like the texting language, right? We have that where we start using shorthand, just abbreviations for different things. But even just like as like what's the phrase? When someone's like saying like, oh, you're they're trying to describe like the impression that they're getting from you. They're saying you're giving this.
It's giving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like you're using like way less words. Like you're giving like a very aggressive tone to me right now.
Yeah.
They just remove that and they're just saying you're giving aggressive.
It's giving aggressive. Yeah. Instead of the way that you're speaking to me right now is giving me the impression of an aggressive tone.
It just feels like as a society, we're just like, I can't use this many words anymore. Yeah. I'm just going to use less and less words until we have like 3 words and you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the global youth culture phenomenon, to where everyone in the world is on certain key social media outlets. And so we all are starting to talk the same and do the same things and believe the same things as we listen to the same people. Now, of course, there's back and forth and rivaling views and things, but we're all affected by that. And so that's where I think a lot of this you do you, that's your truth kind of stuff comes. And it's so popular because it seems so loving, right? Hey,
so
you
tolerant.
have that. Yeah, I'm so tolerant. You have that experience, and I'm not here to take away from your experience. And I think that's a valid thing. There could be a woman who has been mistreated by men her whole life. And to her, men are bad. They're not trustworthy. They're selfish. They're dangerous. And that's a real experience for her. Now, is it universally true that all men are bad? The Bible would say yes. No, but maybe not in that way that she's saying, But for her, hey, that's her experience. She doesn't have a different experience with men. And we don't want to minimize that. But is that objective universal truth that men are bad because of her experience? It's not. But her experience is a valid thing that we, other people around, have to kind of take some time to just understand where that person's coming from, even though we wouldn't say, hey, that's not my experience, but because you've had that experience, shoot, I guess I have to make that my experience. And we do that a little bit today, I think. We kind of will take on other people's experiences and then we'll call it truths. And oh man, I think that does something to diminish the beauty of uniqueness in God's creation, especially with his image bearers, with people. I don't know. Makes me a little sad,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
What do we had for that one?
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some people will kind of counter with this whole conversation around objective and subjective truth by making the claim that we can't even really know anything is true at all, right? You can say, how can you prove that you're not just living in a simulation, that you're not just like a brain hooked up in a jar to some wires, and this is all just run by a scientist in, you know, some lab somewhere, and none of your experiences are actually real. Like, you can't prove any of that. So how can we know truth? Can we know anything that is true, and how?
I realized I had more stuff to share.
Oh, did you?
First one.
Come back?
I'm sorry. I was like, oh wait,
Yeah.
no, those notes are. I will get back to that.
Okay.
Because I've got something to share about that too. But I think one thing is one question that I've heard as it comes to your truth, subjective truth, objective truth, is like why it matters. Like, hey, why does this matter so much to you that this is my truth, or this is a full truth, or whatever? Why does that matter to you? Like, why can't you just leave me alone? I haven't heard that from me personally, but I've heard that question shared. And I think that when we discuss universal like questions, when we discuss big questions like the existence of God, because you've heard A.W. Tozer share, right, that whatever a culture or a people group thinks about God is the ultimate thing about them. Like that's the defining trait about that people group. But yeah, so truth has to be objective. If God is a subjective thing, then anyone could hold contradictory views or beliefs about him, and all would be equally valid. And of course, that violates the law of non-contradiction, which states that two opposing truths can't be correct at the same time in the same sense. And I think that's a really important thing that we need to consider when we think about like relative truth.
Yeah.
Is that law of non-contradiction. Yeah. And so, yeah, today most people embrace relativism, that idea that truth can just depend on cultural perspectives or experiences. And while it is legitimate that it does apply to those things, it can't, by the very nature of, non-contradiction, it can't apply to factual claims. That Football League guy that you talked about with the Hall of Fame, no one can say, no, it was actually this person. Because you'd say, actually, if you look at these...
But both Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen did not win MVP last year.
Yeah. You could say, that is objectively false.
Yeah.
Because look at the evidence, Yeah. So if someone claims God exists, another person says God doesn't exist, both statements can't be true at the same time in the same sense. So I just wanted to cap that off with that. And yeah. So we don't want to give it, what does Tim Keller call it? Denying objective truth leads to self-defeating relativism. Self-defeating relativism. If all truth were subjective, then even the statement truth is subjective couldn't be universally valid.
Yeah.
Bam. Way to go.
Yeah, because that would be an objective truth.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you just can't do that.
Yeah. That makes me think of the line from Revenge of the Sith.
Please.
When Obi-Wan and Anakin are fighting, he says, and Obi-Wan is... They're arguing before they start fighting, and Obi-Wan says, only a Sith deals in absolutes, not realizing that his statement right there was an absolute.
Yeah, which I think it just reveals to us that Obi-Wan has always been evil.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sith, obviously.
Yeah. He lied to Luke.
Yeah.
And then tried to play it off later in episode 6 saying, what I said was true from a certain point of view.
Yeah. So our series after the spiritual disciplines will be one on Star Wars. No, just kidding.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Just like all the spiritual references.
Christ in media.
Yeah.
Dude. If you want that, let us know. Otherwise, we're not going to do it. So you got to let us know. Yeah. So I don't think I need to talk about that.
Should we move on now to if we can know truth and how we know truth?
Can we know and how?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we can know truth, universal truth. So as I say truth going forward, I mean universal objective truth. We can know truth through evidence, through logic and reason and these kinds of things. And so I'm going to kind of break them down a little bit. So reason and logic, that's one way that we can know truth. Human reasoning allows us to recognize self-evident truths and logical principles. Again, the 2 + 2 = 4. We can say, yep, I can know that that's true. Okay, I can know that that's true through logic, just in general. Something can't come from nothing. That's something that we can logically get there reasonably. The existence of logic itself kind of points to a logical, rational creator, as logical laws are immaterial and universal and unchanging. People will, of course, through scientific study and research, uncover new things, right? They'll kind of figure, hey, we didn't even have the ability to figure that thing out before. So now we recognize this, and that's cool. And again, I think it all still points to the Lord. But empirical evidence, so I'm talking about truth as an objective thing again, yeah. Science reveals truths about the physical world through observation and experimentation. The intricate design of DNA points to an intelligent designer. The late atheist Antony without the H, Antony Flew admitted this, saying, "The almost unbelievable complexity of the arrangements which are needed to produce life has been enough to convince me that there must be an intelligence involved." So there's that. Mm-hmm. And then there's also revelation kind of in general, and another way that we can learn truth. But I want to avoid like self-reliant logic, that kind of can be a little cyclical. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you can plausibly deny that you can know anything, right? Like that argument of like, I can't prove to you mm-hmm. or to myself that I am just a brain, that I'm not just a brain hooked up in a jar, mm-hmm. experiencing things through a simulation. But I think it's also impossible to live consistently sure. with the belief that you can't know truth.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's just going to lead to different inconsistencies. You have these things that you live by that you believe to be true. And if you deny knowing truth at all, it becomes impossible to live consistently like that, mm-hmm. if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think we can and must, I think, know truth. Mm-hmm. I think, yeah. Yeah, and like you said, people can argue, hey, religious truth, that's unknowable, mm-hmm. But again, I think as we look at empirical, fact-based evidence, historical truths about Jesus, like the life, the crucifixion, the things that we've talked about in this series so far as resurrection, they're validated by external sources, like we've talked about, and they align with the accounts that we have, and then logical reasoning supports the coherence of Christian claims about God's nature and his actions. It all, logic, reason, science, all of these things, rationality in general, they do point to a truth giver, mm-hmm. those kinds of things. Again, moral law, just even as we've talked about in the past, moral law points to objective truth that points to a moral lawgiver, just reasonably, logically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think you nailed it. Yeah. So we can know truth. And we know the difference between objective and subjective truth. And that kind of leads us into the conversation around Christianity and world mm-hmm. religions and different beliefs. So some argue that picking a religion is like picking a water bottle out of a case of water, right? They all have the same substance. It's just a preference of which one are you actually grabbing. But I think we've kind of covered this a little bit on why that's maybe not necessarily the case, because there are contradictions in claims made by Christianity and Judaism and mm-hmm. Islam and Hinduism and Taoism and all of them. Yeah. So why can there only be one true religion?
Yeah, and we did talk about this. There's that law of non-contradiction that I think is really important. Mm-hmm. Again, contradictory claims cannot all be true. They can't coexist at the same time in the same sense, right? So one person can be hot, one person can be cold, right? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about if you were to say that, again, football-y guy were in the Hall of Fame and someone else would say that they are not, that contradicts. That doesn't jive. That doesn't work. If Jesus says, I am the only way to the Father, none get to the Father except through me, and then some other guy is like, just work hard enough and you'll get there, that doesn't jive. That doesn't work. That's contradictory. One of them has to be false. One of them has to be true. One of them has to be false. They can't both be true at the same time.
Right.
Yeah, is what I mean by that. But yeah, so we have that. Religions make mutually exclusive claims like that, right? Jesus himself in the classic John 14:6, like, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. That's a mutually exclusive claim. That's saying this is it. This is the only possibility for you, right? Islam claims that Jesus is only a prophet, whereas Christianity says that Jesus is the Word. He was with God. He is God. All these different, Colossians, the whole book is about his deity, basically. Jesus is God. Islam claims that Jesus is just a prophet. Those two don't work together, right? They don't work together. Hinduism claims that there's many gods. Oh, okay. So now we can't have one true God and many gods. That doesn't work. They don't work together. Mutually exclusive. So if two religions claim opposite things about God, about salvation, God, his character and nature, the afterlife, they can't both be true at the same time. Jesus can't both be God, as Christianity claims, and not God, as Islam claims. And so either, one is true or none of them are. They can't both be true at the same time. And of course, if we talk about some of like the biblical support, Acts 4, it says there's salvation in no one else. God has given no other name under heaven by which we must be saved. That's a pretty bold, exclusive claim. Isaiah 45:5 says, I am the Lord, and there is no other. Besides me, there is no God. So, okay. So what do you do with that when it comes to, there's lots of gods. I'm the Lord. I'm the God. There's no other beside me. And he's not making a ranking conversation there. He's saying none other exist. So why is this important? Again, if Christianity is true, it provides the only solution to humanity's ultimate problem of sin. And if it's not, well, we've got some issues as Christians, But again, you can't have those two things working together. So that's why there can only be one true religion, because every religion makes exclusive claims. There are similarities out there, which we'll talk about, but there are some similarities. And there's similarities out there a lot with kind of how we obtain this higher state, whether it's eternal life, whether it's a special kind of consciousness, whatever it is. There's a lot of claims out there, right, from different religions that refer to being kind enough, doing good enough things, and continuing on. And so I understand why this is a question. I totally understand why this is a question. And you could look at Christianity and say, so there's like rules here about doing good things and how that's good, and we should be doing those things. But it's not that they're not saying the same things. A lot of people would say, so kind of like looking at the other side, a lot of people would say that this breeds intolerance, which kind of flies in the face of the message that we're trying to bring. But again, truth is exclusive by nature. Like real truth is exclusive by nature. For example, mathematical truths exclude incorrect answers. I'm sorry. 2 + 2 is not 5. It won't be 5. It'll never be 5. That's not intolerant or mean. That's just truth. That's by its very nature. It's not unloving to say, if you have X sickness, then Y medicine is the thing that you need to get better. It's not unloving to say, well, all of these other things won't help you. Only this one will help you. In fact, it would be unloving to say like, hey, take whatever you want. I don't want to like limit what you have. Like, no, these 316 other things here will actually kill you in your current state. So it is with Christianity. You know, it uniquely teaches love and grace towards those who disagree. You know, which promotes humility, not arrogance, as kind of the intolerance concept brings about.
Yeah, and I'd expand on that too and just say, like, every worldview is exclusive. Whatever claim you make about the world is an exclusive claim. An example that Tim Keller would share a lot is from a counterpoint that skeptics would often use on kind of religion in general, and saying that, like, the different world religions are like a bunch of blind men touching an elephant and trying to describe it to people, right? So the elephant is God in this scenario, and so the one is holding on to his trunk, and he says God is like a snake. You know, the elephant is like a snake, and one is holding onto his leg, and he says, well, it's like a tree, you know, and then one is holding onto it, touching his belly, and he feels it big and flat, and he says it's like a wall, and the one's holding his tail, and he's like, it's like a little rope, you know, and so the analogy here being that all the world religions are looking at God and seeing different perspectives of God, different parts of God, but not seeing the full picture. And then he breaks down the analogy and says, well, the problem with this analogy is that it's coming from the perspective of someone who's not blind, who can see the full elephant. So if you make this claim that, well, all of the world religions are pointing to God and getting different aspects of God, you're making the claim that you actually see the full picture, that there is a fuller picture to be seen, and that one of these other blind people aren't correct or have a more fuller picture of what they're actually touching.
Yeah. Mr. Keller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tim Keller.
Good
what
stuff.
a guy.
Yep. Good stuff.
Yeah. So let's start comparing Christianity with the other religions and like what is similar about them and what's different. And we'll start with where Christianity agrees with most of the world religions.
Yeah. So Christianity shares a lot of moral values with a lot of world religions. You know, loving other people, justice, like the sense of kind of right and wrong, and upholding those, care for others. That's in many. I'll say most world religions have those core tenets about them. How you go about them might be, the practices therein might be different, but again, the commonalities point to a universal moral lawgiver. Joshua McDowell argues that this moral convergence across cultures suggests an objective moral source, and that we should see that as we look at the similarities, instead of like, oh well, they're all just roads to the same destination. That's not how we should look at it through that. But here's some of the things that are similar here. So there's a sense of the divine. Most religions recognize a higher power or some sort of a spiritual realm, higher state, something like that. And Christianity aligns with this. I mean, there's clarifications which we can get into later on in our next question. Ethical teachings. Many religions teach virtues like kindness, honesty, and love, and the Bible affirms these, because they're rooted in God's character. The golden rule: do unto others as you would have done to yourself, or as you would have them do unto you. That appears in various forms across many religions. So there's similarities there. Human brokenness. Most religions acknowledge that people have flaws. Most of them do. And they try to fix that. They seek to address those flaws and weaknesses, and where Christianity is a little different is, no, I'm going to wait. I'm going to hold on until the next question because I don't want to give things up. But skeptics might look at that and see shared morals and evidence as evidence against Christianity's uniqueness. Mm-hmm. But again, they highlight God's common grace, but they don't account for kind of the next steps with those things, because that's where a lot of the next steps are where there's differences. Mm-hmm. And that's where we'll get into soon just how unique Christianity really is from the world religions. But yeah, what thoughts do you have?
Yeah. I kind of go back to that. We've talked about it before, but that C.S. Lewis quote where he talks about, everyone always kind of agreed on what you ought to be, right? That you ought to be selfless, right? Nobody ever thought you should be selfish. There's never been a religion or a culture that has said you should be selfish. It's actually better to be selfish. No, they all value selflessness. They just disagree on who that selflessness should be pointed at, right? Whether it's just to your family or just to your community or to everyone in general, right? That's where the disagreements come in. But nobody's ever been like, yeah, actually selfishness is the best way to do life. That's actually good. Or, murdering people, that's actually good.
Yeah.
No, it's been like, well, there's been disagreements on whether killing is permissible in different circumstances for different reasons, but nobody said you can just kill anyone for any reason.
Let's just do that.
Ever, right? Or marriage, right? That men can. There's been different disagreements on whether men can have one wife, two wives, we can have multiple partners or whatever. Or women or men could all have different partners or whatever. But they all agree that you shouldn't be able to just have any woman that you want at any moment, right?
Right.
Like those kind of things are just like consistently looked down upon and saying like, no, there's some sort of standard here. They disagree on the various levels of the standards, but yeah, there is a standard that they all are pointing to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Well said. So there are some similarities,
There are.
real similarities, which is why I think people can be confused. It's not.
If all these religions are just trying to get us to do the same thing,
Yeah.
then what's the difference?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about
Let's talk
that.
about the difference. What makes Christianity unique from the other religions? What are some of the unique claims?
Yeah. Yeah. So the incarnation is a huge one, right? That says, God became in form in human likeness. God became a man in human likeness. John 1:14 talks about that. So he became a man in Jesus Christ. So totally unique, right? The resurrection, Jesus' bodily resurrection as a historical and verifiable event. I'm just going to keep saying that kind of stuff. Sorry, but that one's big for me. No other religion claims that its founder rose from the dead in the same sense. Salvation by grace is a big one, a really, really big one. Salvation is a free gift. No amount of good working will get you there. You can't do it. And in fact, I would say that, and Jesus would probably say himself in the Sermon on the Mount, right? He raises the standard impossibly high to show them, no, you can't do it. All of your, air quotes, righteousness is not enough, and it'll never be enough. Look at this. You've heard it say, don't murder. But I tell you, whoever hates his brother and sister, or who gets angry at his brother and sister, whoever says out, you fool, has murdered them in their hearts. Hey, you've heard it say, don't commit adultery. But I tell you, whoever lusts after a woman in his heart has committed adultery in his heart. The standard's so impossibly high that no one can do it. And so salvation, only by trusting in someone else and that our works can't do anything about it, is totally unique. Totally unique. You can't earn it. You don't deserve it. But it's a gift, a free gift. And other religions emphasize human effort to achieve that state, whether it's salvation, whether it's eternal life, whether it's higher consciousness, those kinds of things. Totally unique there. A personal relationship with God, there are variants on this, of course, but the way that we are invited to know God and to become part of his family, the way we are invited into that is totally unique. The intimate love that we get access to, that God talks about over and over, is totally unique, which is such a beautiful, beautiful thing. We're invited to know God as our own Father through Jesus. And other religions often portray God as impersonal, or distant, or aloof in some way, right? Then we have all these fulfilled prophecies, which people have to kind of deal with. Christianity fulfills hundreds, as we've talked about, of Old Testament prophecies about the Messiah. Like, Isaiah 53 is like the big one that I love. But yeah, so we've got all these different things that you historically can point to and say, oh, shoot, this is like a thing I have to deal with. This actually happened. This stuff actually happened. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I think among all of those, I think the one that I gravitate towards the most is the marriage between justice and mercy, right? The goodness of God and also the lovingness of God, and how there's never been another worldview where both of those have been addressed adequately. In every other worldview, you either get a God who is all loving, right? But it's not that good because he loves people, but he can't deal with the brokenness of the world, which is something that all the religions agree on, right? Is that there's something wrong with the world that needs fixing. But if God is all merciful and not just enough, then he's not really that good, right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, he might be very just and will deal with all the punishment, but he's not loving enough because he's not able to save people. But in Christianity is the only place where we get both of those things fully satisfied in the person of Jesus, in the incarnation of God taking on the sin, of dealing with the problem of sin himself, and lovingly providing a way for people to enter into relationship with him. I think that is really what separates Christianity from every other worldview, is that it can both deal with the problem of the world and still allow humanity to exist and continue.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah, that's well said.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah. Anything else there on the unique claims of Christianity? Did we touch on the Trinity? Maybe I missed that.
We didn't.
Yeah, the Trinity is also a exclusive claim to Christianity.
Yeah, for sure.
The depiction of God there, that God is three persons in one being, right? In every other religion, you get either multiple gods. There are a plethora of gods, or you get one single God in one person, and it's a contradiction to say otherwise, right? It's heresy to say that God can be three different persons in one being, but that's exactly the claim that Christianity makes, that God is the Father, the Son, and the Spirit being one being while being three distinct persons.
Yeah. I mean, even Mormonism claims that the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are different, distinct gods. Yeah. I mean, that is definitely a unique factor about Christianity for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. So I thought we'd finish up this conversation after 8 weeks of discussing the reasoning and the evidence behind the Christian faith, to give us one last chance to make the case for Christianity. Why, if someone out there is still listening who is undecided on Christianity, or picking a different religion or whatever, is still deciding, there might be someone out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Why should they choose Christianity over other religions?
Yeah. Well, I think first, unlike works-based religions that exist today or have existed, Christianity emphasizes grace, this undeserved, unmerited favor, love, kindness from God, and reconciliation in a very unique way. Looking at other religions, and if your good stuff outweighs your bad stuff, if you can just do enough good, if you can just keep going, if you can just climb the mountain a little bit higher, push harder, stop messing up, well then hopefully you'll get there. And I can't stand under that kind of pressure. No one can stand under that kind of pressure. And so the beautiful thing about Christianity is that God himself made the payment, did the work, fixed the problem, and reconciled a messed up humanity to himself on his own initiative, through his own power. And all it takes is trust. All it takes is trust in the work that someone else did. Because if it were in anything else, if it were like, okay, if you have to have enough, a certain measure of faith in order to be saved, well then at some point you'd fall short. 'Cause, right, we waver, we have doubts, so those kinds of things happen. If you pray enough, right, well, at some point we'd fail in our praying. What do you do when you're sleeping? You're not praying, then it wouldn't be enough. If you just worship enough, if you sing enough, if you do anything enough, well, we'd fail at any and every one of them, wouldn't we? So what Christianity does is it solves that problem. Like we've said a number of times already on this episode, it solves the problem in a unique way that really meets our need as needy, sinful creation. So that's one thing. I might go on unless you wanted to share something right now, but yeah, historical reliability. I hope that all of the things that we've shared over these, how many? 8 episodes?
Yes.
Yeah, 8 episodes have been enough to show that Christianity is not like just another thing that's out there that some happy guy wrote a book and it sounds really nice and so we should follow it, or some misogynistic guy just wanted to oppress women and put it out there, and so those guys who are also misogynistic can jump on board and feel superior. It's nothing like that. No, instead we have these historical events that non-Christian sources point to. There's so much evidence around and reliability around the events that make up the scriptures that we have today. These kinds of things, and like Josh McDowell says in the title of his book, it's evidence that demands a verdict. It's evidence that needs a response, either to say, "Hey, I hear it and it's compelling, but I just don't want it," or, "Hey, I hear it and I didn't consider it, and yeah, maybe I need a savior." So yeah, again, the New Testament alone is it's supported by over 5,800 Greek manuscripts. It's the best attested ancient text. It's reliable, as we've talked about. So we have that. Transformed lives is another one that we haven't talked about too much, a little bit maybe through the series, but millions, literal millions testify to the life-changing power of Christ. It changed the world, the whole world, as we've talked about, right? It's changed the world. People like Paul, as we see in Acts, me, you, people who have been changed from one way to be another, not just through, hey, I started acting in a nicer manner toward others, and so now people get to experience me working hard to be nicer, but real, genuine, transformed lives, and so we have people like J. Warner Wallace, the detective, and Lee Strobel, people who moved from skepticism to faith through experiencing changes in their lives. It's funny how they have like the same story, but they're just like, one was a investigative journalist and one was a detective, but they experienced this weird encounter of like, hey, your life is different now, and I didn't sign up for that, so I'm going to disprove this. And then they couldn't. And in fact, all of the uncovering of the evidence led them to become saved. So transformed lives is another one. And then love and grace. Christianity uniquely emphasizes God's unconditional love and his grace. Again, maybe you've heard the story, maybe you haven't, but there's this spot, right, to where God puts Abraham in a sleep, and he there's this sacrifice that used to be done at this time, kind of almost more of like a pact that people would make, and they'd take these animals, and it's gruesome, but they would cut them in half and kind of put the animals to either side. There'd be this blood trail in the middle, and both would walk through the blood trail. Again, gruesome, yuck, but that would signify, may this happen to me if I don't keep up my end of the bargain. And so God puts Abraham in a deep sleep, and he prepares these animals, and God goes through the blood trail, and he never requires Abraham to do so. He just says, may this happen to me if I don't keep up my end of the bargain, which is just this beautiful thing that I think really encapsulates all of God's heart in Christianity. I'm faithful, and I'm going to be faithful. May this happen to me if I'm not faithful. But only God went through that blood trail. And so we have this beautiful grace based on someone else's initiative, who again was able to perfectly enact justice for all of our sins, for all of our failings, for all of our flaws, like all the other religions attest to. But he did it by pouring it on his own son, on himself, instead of us. And so again, we have this perfect blend of perfect justice and unreasonable goodness married in the person of Jesus Christ, God the Father, the Holy Spirit, and now he lives in us. It's just this beautiful thing. Romans 5:8 just says that, God showed his great love for us, and while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. I actually like just a little bit before that, it says, while we were weak, at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. Because that sinners is just this word, like we talked about in the beginning of this episode, that just gets thrown around. We don't really know what it means. We don't talk about the seriousness of rebelling against the one who made everything and gets to say how things go. Not just because he's a powerful guy and he really needs us to listen, but because there's a right way to do things. Again, all the moral law, all these different things. But what I think it does by saying, while we were weak, we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it ourselves. At the right time, God swooped in like a superhero. It's so cool. Christ died for the ungodly, for people who hated him, who wanted nothing to do with him. And that's us. That's every single one of us, right? And so that's what I would say. That's some of what I would say on why someone should choose Christianity. Besides the fact that, again, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one gets to the Father except through me, right? There's this exclusive claim that you have to do something with. Again, you have to be like, well, you're lying. Well, we've already talked about that, okay? Jesus wasn't a liar. Otherwise the world wouldn't have been shaped in the way that it was because of Jesus himself. So, or you have to kind of look at him and say, shoot, maybe that was true. Maybe you meant that. And so you're left with a choice. To believe him or not, But yeah, what would you say?
Yeah, I think that's really good. I think you do a really good job. I'd say you can be as confident or more confident in the Christian worldview than you can with any other worldview, right? Like it holds up to every other worldview, and in most cases far surpasses the reliability of anything, atheism, pantheism, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism. All right, there is far more reason to believe that Christianity is true, and the claims that Christianity is true, than there is for any of those. And all that being said, it's still not an airtight argument, right? There's still arguments that you can be made against it. But as Tim Keller said, maybe God didn't give us an airtight argument. He gave us an airtight person. And at the center of Christianity is the airtight person, the perfect person. And you can look at his teaching, his acts, his works, the people who he has touched, the fruit of the people who have given their lives to him, who have claimed to have interactions with this person, who have claimed to have met this person, and the transformations that we've seen, and the world being changed by this dude who came out of a podunk town in Middle East, this tiny town that was under the rule of the Roman authority, and whose influence crippled the Roman Empire, and changed the world dramatically. And that's what we have in the person of Jesus. Right? The perfect person. And that being said, Christianity, if you choose to follow it, does not come without a cost. Right? Jesus said that if you want to follow him, you have to pick up your cross and follow me daily. It's going to be hard.
Deny yourself, he said.
And deny yourself. It's gonna take sacrifice and suffering. But Christianity will also equip you to deal with those things. It'll equip you to get through the hard parts of life. And I thought of the verse from Matthew 19, where Jesus is addressing this. Matthew 19:28 and 29. He says, "Truly I say to you, in the new world, when the Son of Man will sit on his glorious throne. You who have followed me will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel," talking to his 12 disciples here. "And everyone who has left his houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or children or lands for my name's sake will receive 100-fold and will inherit eternal life." So there's this cost that comes with following Jesus, but if he is who he says he is, then all of it will be worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. What does Paul say? Not worth, and Peter, they both say it, not worth comparing. Not worth comparing. Incomparable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We have truly found the treasure buried in the field.
Yeah. Here's a question we don't have written down that I don't think will be hard to answer. Okay. Don't worry. So all of this information that we've gone over for these past 8 weeks is fairly readily available. It's not too hard to Google this stuff, these kinds of things, as we've learned in our research. What do you think holds people back by and this? There's probably a ton of answers here, but what do you think are just some things that can hold people back from investigating this, or from, if they know at least some of it, the gist of it, from saying, yeah, that's what I want. What do you think holds people back in light of all this stuff that we've been talking about?
I think it's the fear of losing that which they're holding on to. That if this is all true, that there's something I have to give up that I'm holding on to. And if I actually take the time to go through and understand this, then the only response is to let go of that thing, but I don't want to let that thing go. So I just choose not to.
Yeah.
I don't know. What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I would say as well. I think it can be a bit of a confrontation. I think a really loving confrontation, but a confrontation, because if you give any leeway to, this might be the real deal, then you have to, one, admit, I've been wrong, or I've been thinking the wrong way, or I've been living the wrong way, and there are real legitimate things that people love that are like good things to love, but the God of the Bible might say, hey, I want you to love that thing in a different way, or the way I've designed it is for this, and actually I want to meet that need, and I'm the only one equipped to meet that need in your heart. This thing is just going to keep you empty and looking for more, like we see, and I mean with drug addiction or pornography addiction or any kind of addiction. I need that thing, and now it's this dose of that thing was not enough, so now I need more of that thing. And God is saying, hey, I designed you such that I would meet that need for you. And I think it takes a confrontation to say, I might have to stop looking to those things for life. And I've been kind of artificially finding life there. And now I'm confronted with that fact. I have to think differently about the world. I have to give up some control, because if there is a God out there who has like a right and wrong, who has a moral law, I'm going to have to put myself under that. And that's not comfortable. Or again, hey, am I going to have to then become one of those dumb people who don't think about stuff and just have faith? And I don't want to be seen that way. Or there's a lot of people that say, I actually do think it's reasonable, and I do want to become that. But if I did, my family would disown me, and I'd experience more pain than I'm willing to experience. I get that. That's a real thing that people deal with. If I go there, I'm going to be disowned. I'm going to be excommunicated from my family, from my whole community. I can't go through that. I understand that, but like we've talked about, it's the only thing that's worth it. It's the only thing that's worth this kind of a life-altering decision. And again, it's not do all of these things to find salvation. It's just trust. Just trust. Making Jesus your Lord, that'll come.
Mm-hmm.
That'll come. You know, as God takes up residence in you and starts working really tenderly and lovingly on your heart, that'll come. First step is just trust.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Yeah. But I get it. It's not an easy decision.
No.
And my life as a Christian has not become easier because of it.
No.
But it's surely become better. I've experienced love like I always wanted, like I always strove for. That was my big thing. Hey, let me get in this relationship. Oh, that didn't work out. I'm just trying to find love. Let me find value from this. Let me find something that'll give me some measure of significance that shows me that somebody might actually care about me. And it always fell short.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my parents weren't there for me in the way that I needed them to be. Every girlfriend I ever had since 5th grade, since I was 5, actually, that never worked out for me. My wife right now, who is the best person alive, is not enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
She's not enough for me. My kids, my beautiful, wonderful kids, they're not enough for me, you know. But while life is hard, I know love now and satisfaction now, and just kind of an intimate understanding of how I'm viewed by a loving Creator, and this beautiful perspective on God's will and purpose. I'm like, hey, things are going this way, but here's what's coming, you know. You can't get that anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen.
Amen.
I don't want to add anything to ruin that.
Yeah. So make that decision.
Yeah.
If you're still concerned about that, email us. If you go to Hometown, just come talk to me. Talk to any one of your pastors. You probably talk to a lot of people, but don't make that decision in a vacuum. Don't like wrestle through this necessarily in a vacuum. We want to talk to you. We want to help you. So just let us know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you want to talk about that more, you can email us at podcast@hometownchurch.com. But I think that's a good place to end this conversation and our series on apologetics.
Sad and happy.
And happy.
But sad. Cool. Well, as usual, and we haven't talked about this in a while, but if there's some questions that you have, if there's something you'd like us to dive in more depth or something, or like something came out of this episode that you're like, what do you think about this, or what about that thing? You know, we would love to talk about those and address those. You know, if the desire is like, hey, look at those dummies or something, I don't know, we might respond to that too and say, yeah, maybe. I don't know. But we love you no matter how you feel about us. But if you got something, just email us. We'd love to talk about it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely.
So next time, what are we talking about?
So coming up, as we have wrapped up this series, we're getting to the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people, they get their New Year's resolutions going. They want to make some changes for the next year.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to urge you to maybe think about how you can improve your spiritual life, your relationship with God in this upcoming year. And so we're going to start a new series kind of as we wrap up the year on spiritual disciplines. We're going to be taking a look at a couple different spiritual disciplines a week, and how the Bible talks about them, how we've implemented them in our lives, how we could improve implementing those in our lives, and
what specific purposes they have.
Specific purposes they have, and how they can form you into a person of love and peace and joy, to better follow Jesus in your daily life.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be starting that next week, and we're hoping to get some guests on, so you don't have to listen to just me and Deacon every week again.
I'm not that mean. Get it? That was an English joke. Me and Deacon.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So next week, that's what we're going to start off. We're going to start off by talking about two different practices. The first one is silence and solitude, and the second is fasting.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we'll be here, same time, same place, hopefully. But yeah, if you're listening on audio platforms, we do have a video version of this on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, we got audio platforms on Apple Podcast, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts. It's all out there. The Hometown Church app, if you want to listen on there as well. But yeah, that's all I got for us. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
Bye.